a lie that she tried to cook up, that she created. And that's just Hillary Clinton. That's just one person. We'll get in a moment, in the rest of the show today, we'll be talking about the consequence, what this means in terms of whether we should ever trust Comey again as a good example. Not that I did trust him, but Obama, Biden, well aware. The Obama White House and senior national security officials in the Obama White House knew since July of 2016 that Hillary and her team had cooked up this idea. Hey, let's create a scandal. Let's make up something about Trump-Russia collusion as a means of, number one, hurting her political opponent, and number two, distracting America's attention from her genuinely illegal conduct related to her email server. So Comey knew, Strzok knew, Obama knew, Biden knew. Broad numbers of people at the highest levels of our government knew that Hillary's team had cooked this up and she had approved it. And yet all of us got treated for the next 3.5 years from the farce, the lie, it's just the monstrosity of the lie that was cooked up. And she cooks up the lie, but the monstrosity of the effort to play it out. You didn't have, it's unclear, by the way, whether Comey and Strzok ever investigated whether or not Hillary approved such a plan, because all they did the rest of the time that we're aware of was try to prove and claim that that there was somehow not a that Trump was the whole problem. The entire effort of the left was to cook up a claim about Trump and Russia, when they cooked it all up themselves. We'll be talking more about this. This ties very much into what we're talking about. All of this ties up very much into what we're going to talk about today as it relates to the presidential debate. But that, my very fine friends, is today's First Five. We're going to continue talking about this story, though, this Hillary's anti-Trump scheme exposed, because the impact of it, the consequence of it, the relevance of it in assessing pretty much everything we've been treated to watch out of the Comey FBI, out of the Mueller investigation, out of what we're still watching today, all is changed. It's all changed now. It's all different now. Now that we know not only that Hillary approved the plan to cook up this Trump-Russia collusion farce, which actually you can say, well, that's not that big news because, Hillary hired Perkins Coie and they hired this Fusion GPS and they in turn got a hold of this Christopher Steele guy who cooked up the dossier. I mean, Hillary was always in the middle of it and in the middle of concocting the farce, the lie that the Trump team was somehow colluding with the Russians. She was in the middle of it. But the bombshell news is that the FBI, the CIA, was aware of it. John Brennan wrote notes about it. These notes have been sitting in the possession of who knows how many people, the FBI and the DOJ. Brennan's notes saying, yeah, we're figuring out the Russians are saying that Hillary has approved a plan to go after Trump and to cook up a lie about Trump-Russia collusion. How many people have known about this inside the CIA and the FBI? And we're just hearing about it now? The American people just hearing about it now? It's like this insider's joke. All these people inside the FBI and the DOJ trying to act solemn and serious, and we're investigating very serious allegations of Trump-Russia collusion. And they're knowing all along, Hillary cooked it up, John Brennan knew all along, Comey knew all along, Peter Strzok knew all along. All these people played along as though there was some big serious crisis ongoing in this Trump-Russia collusion thing, and the only crisis was that they were hiding it, the fact that they knew that Hillary cooked it all up from the start. And it goes back to Obama and Biden. This is, after all, occurring under the Obama-Biden administration, their officials running the CIA, the FBI, the DOJ, heck, the NSA, the Department of State, their people running all of this. And now for the first time this has come to light. This came to light, by the way, because the investigation by John Durham, the ongoing investigation into whether or not, into the beginning, how do we get started with this Trump-Russia collusion farce, hoax, how the Russian collusion hoax gets started is John Durham's assignment inside as he's investigating. And he came up with these notes. Durham came up with Brennan's notes. Brennan's handwriting acknowledging all along he knew that Hillary cooked up this plot and Hillary was using it as a campaign tool. But now the big news is the American people know it. And my friends, you have to force yourself to think back of all of the lies that the left has told. All of the lies, leaders of the FBI, DOJ, heck, NSA, CIA, pretending that we're investigating very, very serious allegations when they knew all along it was a Hillary plot, a Hillary scheme, a Hillary trying to distract the American public's attention from her genuine lawlessness and using an unprotected server for all the reasons we talked about 100 times on this show. But she cooks this up to distract attention, and the dutiful, compliant media humors her, humors the farce, humors the story, as does Comey, Strzok, and a whole bunch of other people at the highest levels in Washington, D.C. And now we're finding out we're in the last day of September, as we're coming up on the election of 2020. We have the election coming up, in less than 2 months in America. And we're just finding out now, September 30th, and maybe it came out maybe 2 days ago, 28th, 29th, that all of this was known to these people all this time. That Hillary cooked this garbage up. That Hillary concocted all of it. And that it was put into play by them. Now, one other point I want to make before I'm going to turn to, this is just impossibly important news. And it's also important to understand when you're President Trump, we're going to get to the debate, because there's a lot to say about the debate. But this what we are now becoming aware, these are the kinds of things that Trump team inside the White House, his top advisors, they're aware of thousands of little things that we don't know, thousands of little bits of data and information that they knew all along. President Trump and his team knew there had been no collusion by the Trump team with Putin or the Russians, that the entire thing was a farce. The entire first 3.5+ years of his presidency had to be encumbered by headline after headline, making allusions, accusations, somehow suggesting, well, maybe because Mueller didn't get to the bottom of it, but doesn't mean it's not true. Trump really is a bad guy. Trump spent a monumental victory in 2016 and yet had to spend the first 3 years of his presidency dealing with a farce cooked up by Hillary Clinton. And where is the clamoring to, as they said during the Trump campaign, to lock her up? Where is the demand that whether, and in fact, Lindsey Graham's one comment that was reported repeatedly in response to all this was, well, my question is, did Comey and Strzok investigate? Okay, that's one question. It's a good question. They should find out if Comey and Strzok just ignored this intelligence coming from their own agencies. I don't know if they even did a pretend investigation, but that was what Lindsey Graham said he wanted to know. That's just one question. Who all knew that Hillary approved this plot? And when did they know it? And who tacitly covered it up? And who made sure that that tracks were covered so no one was aware of it? And who participated in it? And who failed to speak up? How many FBI agents involved in the whole Mueller investigation were actually aware that Hillary had cooked this up from the start? People, this is monumental. It's monumental. And another quick point I want to hit on this before I want to talk about Lieutenant General Flynn in a moment, and then we're going to get to the debate last night. But one other really important point, and we're going to be talking about this as the story unfolds more, but it's possible to hear this news that Brennan, as I say, Brennan, then CIA Director Brennan, his own notes acknowledges that he took this intelligence, this Russian intelligence that reported they become aware that Hillary Clinton had approved a plan to cook up a lie about Trump and Russia collusion. It all came from Hillary, and the CIA knew about it from July of 2016. But in Brennan's own handwriting, he says, yeah, we went ahead, we briefed President Obama and other national security officials on the intelligence, including the alleged approval by Hillary Clinton on July 26th of 2016 of a proposal from someone in her staff to vilify Trump by stirring up a scandal claiming interference by Russian security services. But you can read that and think, oh, okay, then I guess this means that John Brennan is in the clear, because Brennan was often pointed to as the one likely to really be the one who cooked up the whole Trump-Russia collusion. that he may have cooked up a lot of what happened in trying to, the whole Papadopoulos, angle of it all. He may have cooked that up. He may have cooked up other, aspects of this. He was kind of behind the scenes pulling the strings in a whole bunch of ways. But the fact that Brennan got this intelligence, the fact that he reported it to President Obama, the fact that in his own handwriting note says he told Obama about it in July of 2016, that he referred it to FBI Director James Comey and Deputy Assistant Director of Counterintelligence Peter Strzok in September of that year, this does not mean that Brennan was innocent, that Brennan had clean hands. It doesn't mean that he was doing a great job over there at the CIA and one day this startling intelligence came in and he jumped right on it and to get a hold of it, to get it moving and to get, report to the proper people, to report it to Obama and his team and Biden, and to report it to Comey and Strzok. It doesn't at all mean that Brennan is innocent. It may mean that Brennan was doing exactly what everyone thinks he was doing, and there's a lot of evidence of that. The perception that Brennan, was orchestrating the whole collusion thing behind the scenes, and all that's really new from this news is that Brennan gets this report saying the Russians have figured it out. The Russians' intelligence is now saying, hey, we think Hillary Clinton is cooking up this story as a campaign tactic to destroy her opponent, Donald Trump. So now it's on Brennan's desk. He's got the CIA. He's the head of the CIA. He's got this intelligence coming from Russia. Even if he's been part of it all, if he's been helping Hillary, this does not mean that he can sit there once this intelligence comes to his attention and just toss it in the circular file. He's got to act at that point. It's come to his attention. He's been told he has to act. And so he goes forward, pretending, oh yes, I'm so shocked and alarmed to hear this, who knew? And reports all of this to Obama, Biden, Comey, Strzok, other national security figures. The fact that this has now come to light in Brennan's own handwriting, acknowledging Hillary was behind it, what it does not mean is that Brennan has clean hands. What it does mean is that literally dozens and hundreds of speeches, statements, and tweets by a whole host of people, but most importantly Hillary Clinton, were premised on a lie, and they knew they were lying when they said it. Hillary knows what she did. Hillary knew what she cooked up. Hillary knew what she engaged Perkins Coie and Fusion GPS to do. Hillary knew all of it. But what this is now saying is, as of July of 2016, the highest levels of government in our country, of national security agencies, knew about it too. And we, the American public, are finding out at the end of September, less than 2 months away from the next election. This is bombshell stuff, except if you are in the world of left-wing media, in which case anything that could possibly help Trump or anything that could possibly hurt Biden doesn't count as news, which is why you won't hear very much of this story out of the mainstream media. The story is huge. Please follow it. You can go to our website, americacanwetalk.org, on the homepage, under shows, drop-down list of links. Read the links I have included there. You can find much more online, but read about this and understand what it means about the profound duplicity and dishonesty at the highest levels of the Democrat Party, including Hillary Clinton, fully aware of what it was she was doing in 2016, allowing the farce of this investigation to be ongoing, all the time knowing she cooked up the story. One other story I want to hit today, before I get to the debate, very quickly cover, but Lieutenant General Michael Flynn still not freed from the left-wing attack on him. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn still facing Judge Emmett Sullivan in Washington, D.C., still represented by the brilliant attorney Sidney Powell. And Lieutenant General Flynn is now waiting. He's in front of a judge in which the Department of Justice has moved to drop all charges, and it's almost impossible to state in common everyday terms, non-legalistic terms, how bizarre, unacceptable, inexplicable, just intolerable the conduct is of Judge Emmett Sullivan. Because he's the judge. He belongs in that of the three branches of government. He's the judge. That's the judiciary branch. You have the prosecutor, the executive branch. The DOJ is the prosecuting arm. They have said to him, we want to drop all charges against Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. And Judge Emmett Sullivan is stepping out of the role of judge and into the role of prosecutor and saying, no, 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 come on, play with me here. Somehow we can find, the judge in this case, member of the judiciary, can find a reason to serve as prosecutor and somehow bring about a prosecution of this man, even though the DOJ says they don't want to prosecute him anymore. I mean, it is impossible to overstate. I'm a lawyer by background, and I've been told a few times I get too far in the weeds on legal things, but you have to understand this is way out of the ballpark of acceptable for a judge to be doing this. So back to Washington, there was a hearing yesterday in federal district court in Washington, D.C. Sidney Powell's there, and Flynn, and the judge, and the prosecutors, all of them, and there's a lawyer there representing the guy sitting on the bench, Judge Emmett Sullivan. So the judge has a lawyer representing him in court, very bizarre, and that lawyer representing the judge is arguing for reasons the judge ought to somehow find a way to arm twist the law, to contort the law, so the judge can bring about a prosecution of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn that the DOJ is not bringing. I mean, people, it's unheard of, unacceptable, and a true contortion of the rule of law in America. Just a complete, profound contortion of the rule of law in America. So Sidney Powell doing a great job, of course. 2 quick points on this. You know, the reason they're so determined to get Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, number one, he got in the crosshairs with President Obama, and because he actually, bizarrely, Flynn is a Democrat. Let's hope he changed parties soon, but he's a Democrat, and he was serving in our military under President Obama, got sideways with President Obama, who was already didn't like him, and then when President Trump wins, and Lieutenant General Michael Flynn agrees to become National Security Advisor. This was too much to stomach for the Obama administration, and they did their entrapment of Flynn. And now that we finally had some, fresh air from some sunlight of truth into the DOJ's operations, and we became aware that what the DOJ was trying to do was not investigate. They were trying to find a reason to get Flynn, and those notes came to light due to the actions of this inspector, this Attorney General, this U.S. Attorney, John Durham, who's investigating, and he found all these handwritten notes making very clear that the entire point of the investigation of Flynn was to find a way to set him up, find a reason to set him up, to prosecute him, put him in the position he's in. In the hearing yesterday, Sidney Powell, brilliant attorney, was making the point that essentially if the judge in this case, Emmett Sullivan, wants to be the prosecutor, that he has to recuse himself as the judge. He can't be the judge in the case where he's also the prosecutor. It's a fundamental notion of separation of powers. While you don't ever have the prosecutor, which is the executive branch, the same thing like district attorney, the prosecutor can't also be the judge. This is the way you keep rule of law, you keep fairness. Those are separated. So she said basically, if you want to be the prosecutor, you should recuse yourself as judge. Second point that came up that caused a bit of a kerfuffle in the news was there was discussion about Sidney Powell having acknowledged that she has spoken to President Trump after the DOJ filed their motion to dismiss all charges against Flynn. She, Sidney Powell, has spoken to President Trump to urge him not to pardon Flynn. She wants to force the system to work. I don't know all of her reasons, but once she said in court that she had a conversation with the president relating to not pardoning Flynn, there was a kind of I said kerfuffle, a reaction like, well, wait a minute, is she really, is she supposed to be doing that, talking to the president? She's allowed to do that. She's allowed to do that after the DOJ has already made their move. They've already moved to dismiss, and she's just saying, if you pardon him, you let essentially. I won't put words in her mouth. My assessment is she doesn't want him pardoned because ultimately, if he's pardoned and the case goes away because of pardon, all the bad actors, all the wrongdoers get away with it. They all get away with it because the case is gone, moot, and she's saying, let's get justice, really pursue justice. Okay, now I'm ready to turn and talk about the debate last night. And I will tell you that I did watch the debate, of course, between President Trump and Well, it was really 2 against 1, but President Trump was on one side. The other was Vice President Biden, who's a Democrat, obviously a candidate for president, as well as the person who was supposed to be the neutral moderator from Fox. It's shocking he still works at Fox, but Chris Wallace. So I want to run down 4 things, and because why I want to get at this in terms of the women's vote and the support of preserving America in light of the Marxist revolution staring us in the face. And that's what I will start with. In this election cycle 2020, we are looking at the leftist attempt, the leftist attempted, ongoing, slow-rolling coup Marxist takeover of America. It's nothing less. We've been talking about this for a while, but again, Antifa, violence in the streets, destroying private property and threatening people and killing people, and Black Lives Matter, a radical leftist movement, a Marxist movement on the streets in America, burning buildings, burning cars, killing people, destroying property, threatening, intimidating, belligerently blocking traffic, surrounding cars, dragging people out of their cars, and absolute silence from the left. Inexcusable, indefensible silence from the left. You have the actual leader of the Revolutionary Communist Party of America, Robert Avakian, saying, this is our chance. This is our time. We're going to have the Marxists take over of America. You have 2 Marxist organizations wild in the streets, no defense from the left. You have the most radical agenda on the American left ever to have been entertained as a supposed platform in support of an American political party. You have the radical left, you have Democrat socialists filling the ranks on the left, on the American left. You have very little condemnation of anything. You never hear people of any stature on the left saying, well, you know, we're not really socialists. President Trump will say it, and Bernie Sanders will happily say he's a socialist. You hear virtually no voices out of the leadership of the American left, of the Democrat Party, saying, hey, wait. We're not Marxist. We're not socialist. We're not going that way. We are watching, my friends, a slow-rolling coup, ongoing coup in this country. And that is the backdrop against which we're going to talk about this debate. Because what the left hopes is that women, especially, will watch this debate and think, oh, I didn't like the way President Trump acted because, you know, he interrupted too much. He seemed belligerent. That's not polite. I don't like when people interrupt. I don't like when people talk over each other. You know, I think that's impolite. This is what the left hopes, that women especially will be duped into analyzing where we are politically based on the personality and conduct of the debate, the personality of the president, instead of recognizing what time it is in America, what time it is in this country. We are facing a loss of freedom in this country. The left's agenda couldn't be more radical, and yet the left is hoping somehow that especially women, but other Americans too, but especially women, will be put off by what they're characterizing as belligerent, interrupting, too rude, whatever they have to say, and that therefore other people will say, well, I can't vote for President Trump because, you know, he interrupted Joe Biden. Women, we cannot be that stupid. I'm going to come back to women, but I'm going to hit 4 points, 4 really big points related to the debate last night. One was, tying back what we talked about at the start of this show, President Trump comes on stage, and here he is to have a debate against not just some random Democrat, but the Democrat who sat in the White House with President Obama as the entire Trump-Russia collusion hoax got cooked up. A leader, the second in command under Obama, who clearly either was fully aware of the entire collusion hoax orchestrated by the Obama administration, put in place by Hillary Clinton and the left, either fully aware of it and therefore complicit, or else clueless and therefore unfit to be president because he's clueless. But when you're President Trump, he's not coming on stage against some random Democrat. He's coming on stage in the context of having spent his entire presidency so far dealing with a farce, a lie of the collusion hoax, and he's debating against a guy who was in the swamp with the Obama team. I'll give you an analogy. Expecting him to behave like a choir boy like a person who's just here to follow a debate protocol and prove that he paid attention in debate class in high school and he knows the rules, is like expecting a person who has been falsely accused or who has been the victim of massive lies and attacks and intimidation, or a person who's been the victim of physical abuse, to stand there and act as though everything's normal. Oh, this is great. Like a woman standing there debating her husband who has been beating her and cheating on her. You might expect a little bit of emotion out of the woman. You might expect a little bit of just normal humanity. President Trump is on stage with a guy wrapped up in the leftist coup attempt to take him out, to lie about him, lie about the Russia collusion thing, and the one who really colluded with Ukrainians, and yet his party is trying to set Trump up as the one who should be impeached over that. So he comes to the battle, he comes to the debate, Trump does, with these facts all on his mind. He's aware of this. This is where he's coming from. He knows what's happened in the past. He knows they've been lying about him for years. He knows the news that we just went over in the start of this show. He knows that news. He knows that actually now they have proof in John Brennan's own handwriting that Hillary cooked up the whole Russia collusion thing, and he and the entire left played along with it, never exposing her until this week. So that's how he comes to the debate, number one. Number two, I want to say a few words about Chris Wallace. He gets a pass from a lot of people because he looks like Poindexter. He has kind of a nerdy look and a nerdy appearance and a kind of, who me? I'm just a squirmy little guy. I'm just kind of, I don't really know what I'm talking about. And what Chris Wallace committed in that debate last night was the kind of thing you learn about in law school, when you're trained in law school, where the question, and this is the example everybody knows, if you're in trial and your witness is asked, do you still beat your wife? You're not allowed to ask that kind of question. Do you still beat your wife? And assumes the fact that you did in the past beat your wife. And there is an objection you make in that context, which is objection assumes facts not in evidence. Chris Wallace asked question after question after question, assuming lies into his question. And so it's like asking someone who has never done anything bad to their wife, do you still beat your wife? You're flummoxed. You're like, I've never done that. What are you even talking about? But Chris Wallace did that in at least 3 examples I want to give you. And I'm telling you this to say it's very rattling when someone does this, and Chris Wallace's conduct was despicable. He does not deserve respect. He does not deserve excuses. He does not deserve have someone say, well, he did his best. No. Chris Wallace came in there as an advocate for Biden, an advocate for the Democrats, a flat-out liar in the way he formed questions to the president. Here are the topics. In fact, I think I sent Matt the Wonderful one of them. I'll get to that in a moment. One question was, he talked about the idea of climate science. Now, he said something to the effect of, to President Trump, something about climate science and do you deny climate science? Whoever his stupid question was. There have been story after story. There's this guy, Michael Schellenberger, just came out recently, a former radical leftist climate alarmist guy, just came out recently wrote a book telling about exposing the reality that the climate tactics, the climate change alarmists have been cooking the books, lying and misleading. His entire book was an apology to the world. I'm so sorry about the climate hoax. I'm so sorry we exaggerated the danger. There have been experts, climatologists, doctors, studies, all sorts of people pointing out that the leftist agenda, the radical leftist climate agenda, is nothing other than a leftist agenda to acquire power, to redistribute wealth, to take control of the freedom of the American people. That's what people have learned about climate science. But Chris Wallace's question to Biden, ask him about climate science. And so what is President Trump supposed to do in the context of, 2-minute answer? To run through all the evidence that everyone is pointing out that the climate alarmism has been extremely exaggerated, that there isn't nearly the threat to human survival that the leftists try to claim, to run through all the examples of the climate scares that have all proven to be false. He doesn't have time to do that. But the point is, Chris Wallace asked this question because it will get Trump rattled and makes him look bad. I mean, and Trump, he handled all his questions fine, but I'm getting at Chris Wallace as one example of how extreme his bias was. Doesn't even acknowledge that around this world, millions are waking up to the farce that the radical leftist climate agenda represents. That was one example, just assuming facts, not evidence. His question assumes that everyone understands the radical climate alarmists are right, and we're all going to die tomorrow unless we do everything they say. He does not, Chris Wallace does not deserve any credit for trying to ask a good question. His question assumed the radical climate alarmists are right and puts Trump in the position trying to answer in 2 minutes about, well, you know, actually a lot of people question that. So, second example had to do with the white supremacist question. And I want to just say on that one, if you had an honest moderator, if you remember this question last night, Chris Wallace said, well, you know, Vice President Biden, you said you launched your entire campaign because President Trump said there are good people on both sides of the question, and he's referring back to the unfortunate incident surrounding the removal of a Civil War statue, and the big issue which still goes on around the country is some people say that we should remove all statues, any kind of plaques or honors to anyone who served on the southern side during the Civil War. Some people say they should all be torn down. You know, any kind of honoring of anyone who served on the southern side should be torn down. And some people say no, we should leave them up. And we should learn our history and teach our history. Those are the two sides President Trump was talking about. The people who say tear them all down, the people who say we should leave them up and learn. There are two sides of a legitimate question of how we treat statues and other things that honor Civil War people who serve in the South. That's what Trump said. He never said anything about, so that's who he said, good people on both sides of the aisle. Good people on both sides of the question. You know, tear them down, leave them up. He never said white supremacists are good people. He never said anything like that. But what Chris Wallace did, but Biden launched his whole campaign on a lie, claiming that Trump said there were good people who are white supremacists, which he never said. And it doesn't matter how often people point out, how often people correct the record, and Trump has corrected the record, and he's made it clear this is something the left does. They just they get a hold of a lie, they repeat it, they glom onto it. And so in the debate last night, when you have Chris Wallace saying to Biden, well, you know, you launched your whole campaign because Trump said there are good people on both sides of the aisle, white supremacists and others, which is not what Trump said. And so this again, assuming facts, not evidence, proof if you ever need it, Chris Wallace should not be trusted in any debate in the rest of American life. He should be fired by Fox. He should be removed from the media because the question was such a lie. The question contained the lie. But this is back to Chris Wallace, why he's so bad. Third one, I sent Matt the one for a short clip by Chris Wallace during the debate last night relating to the question he asked about will you promise no violence coming forward as we sort out what the election results are.
Huge increase in mail-in balloting that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what, from a common sense,
does that mean you're going to tell your people to take to the street?
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it, number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
you think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question.
Okay, people, I can hardly stand up. But the reason I wanted to play that is this. When Chris Wallace is asking President Trump that question, I know that people say, well, you know, he could have just said, sure, ultimately, yeah, I'll go along with the election results. But again, assuming facts not in evidence, a biased question, Chris Wallace tried and several times said, everyone knows there's no problem with mail-in ballots. There's no problem with fraud. I don't know why, you know, people do it all the time, blah, 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 blah. What Biden is, what Trump is hearing is, and everyone can see, is the left is working to steal this election. Everyone can see this. The massive mail-in ballots being sent out, obviously an attempt, and everyone can see it who pays any attention, understands that mail-in ballots are the primary source of potential mail-in fraud. And so when Trump hears that question, what he's hearing is, if the Democrats manage to steal this election, if they manage to somehow claim they won it, but everyone can see it's fraudulent, will you just surrender? That's what he's really being asked. He's saying, no, actually, I will not surrender. I will not surrender if what I know is the mail-in ballots were fraudulently used and the supposed outcome of the election was driven by fraud. I, Trump, am not just going to throw my hands up and say, oh, okay, I give in, let the cheaters have it. That is what Trump is hearing. And he's right to hear it that way. He's right. When Chris Wallace cannot acknowledge that mail-in ballots, as quoted, again, we talked about this a couple days ago on the show, back in 2015 or 2005, there was a massive commission, federal level, chaired by former President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker, who concluded that absentee ballots remain the largest source of potential voter fraud. Everyone who looks into this issue understands. All the experts understand. You look into these things, you understand that's how the left cheats. Maybe Republicans do too, but it's a problem of the left. It's the left pushing this. But President Trump, on the debate stage, 2 minutes to answer, he's basically being asked to say, will you concede, even if the Democrats cheat, and they win by cheating and everyone can see is cheating, once we have somebody certified Biden won, will you just give up? And you know what, folks? Everyone who loves Trump, everyone who supports him, agrees with him. No, we're not going to let the left steal this election, and everyone can see that's what they're trying to do. Now, it would have been great if Trump had been able to, conjure up in that very short 2-minute answer something along the lines of acknowledging Jimmy Carter has said and James Baker has said absentee ballots are the largest source of potential voter fraud. It'd be great if he could have quoted Attorney General William Barr, who has repeatedly said, mail-in voting absolutely opens the floodgates to fraud. This is what the facts are. And again, this little segment, I told you I have 4 things about the debate last night. One was where Trump walks into the debate recognizing he's debating Biden, who was all involved with the coup attempt against him on the Obama-Hillary mess they created with the Russia collusion hoax. Number 2, you had Chris Wallace asking questions, assuming facts not in evidence, essentially baking lies into his questions. When he says, everyone knows there's nothing wrong with mail-in ballots, and there's perfectly nothing wrong with them. So, President Trump, will you go ahead and agree that if the Democrats win this election through mail-in fraud, you'll just capitulate? Thank goodness Trump said, no, I won't capitulate. He had a great line there, too, Trump did, by the way, where he said something about when Biden was saying, well, won't you accept the results of the elections? And Trump said something like, the Democrats haven't accepted the results of the 2016 elections. They're still fussing over those. It was a great line. But I want to hit 2 other points about the debates last night, and ending with the impact on women. One was how well Biden did. And I mean that in the sense of he strung together numerous coherent sentences without stumbling for an hour and a half, which was honestly something I have said on the show I didn't think he could do. I didn't think he could handle it. I will say, and many of you, if you pay close attention, have noticed there are pictures out now on Twitter, other places, where at one point in the evening, when Biden had his arm up like this, so he's got his cuff of his shirt, you can see an object protruding out of the end of his sleeve, it looks like a medical, like an IV type thing, sticking out of his, so something was in his sleeve looking like a medical device of some kind. A lot of people curious about whether or not he had to be medicated in some way to be able to function in that debate. Because he has, and people, this is the same Biden. I know everyone, I think people saw Biden last night and said, wow, I guess we were all wrong. Guess he's really just doing great. Guess he's totally, he's just fine. He's mentally together and we were all wrong all this time. This is the same Biden who, over the past 6 months, has been hiding in the basement of his home, who often cannot string together 2 sentences, who loses track when he's beginning to recite the very beginning of the Declaration of Independence, when he's trying to remember which race he's running in, can't keep track of when he was in the White House. He hasn't had like one little mental stumble where he forgot someone's name, or he said something was last Tuesday, but it was really Thursday. We're talking dozens and dozens of instances throughout this campaign cycle of 2020 when he had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. Lost in the middle of a sentence, stuttering, mumbling, looking off, his wife finally having to jump in, rescue him, saying, that's all for now, thanks, Joe, and drag him away. It's the same person. He did not suddenly overcome dementia. He did not. I will grant the left, they propped him up and he got through an hour and a half. He's still the same Biden. It's still the same guy who could not put 3 sentences together. Now, a lot of speculation has been around the idea that they have, if you've noticed, the news cycle reports frequently how Vice President Biden will come out in some morning statement or some morning short interview, and he's done for the day. His campaign schedule's done for the day. There have been headlines, done for the day, 9:20 a.m., finished for the day, 8:30 a.m. There's been speculation that they were trying to have him change his sleep cycle. He could be up in the morning talking, but get him into sleeping all day. It's called changing your circadian rhythm. So you're sleeping all day, and so when you, at the end of the day, when you would normally be waking up after a long sleep, for him it's like morning. They were trying to get him into a rhythm where because he has been unavailable during the heart of the day for weeks now, and done at 9 in the morning with his press whatever he does, press conferences. So the idea was maybe he's being urged to get into that rhythm, sleep all day, so he could be propped up and be as alert as possible, because in his sleep cycle he's in the morning. He's in morning cycle. Now that is speculation. It sounds very plausible to me because there is no other explanation, or I don't know of the explanation for how he could put together an hour and a half of sort of coherence when he couldn't do it for 5 minutes in the last months and months of the election cycle. Something weird was going on with Joe Biden last night. I think he probably is getting some medications, and I know from watching senior members of my family go through dementia, most of them are far more alert in the morning. They're best in the morning, and as the day goes down, they get tired, they get worse. I don't know if that's what happened, but just because Vice President Biden managed to show up for an hour and a half and engage in a debate does not mean his new mental status of performing for an hour and a half is sustainable. It doesn't mean he can handle that. It does not. It just means they got him through an hour and a half, probably with some drugs into his system, keeping him alert, keeping him active. Who knows? But it's not because he's actually back to being mentally fit. The same Biden we've been watching for months did not go away. He was there. That's the same Biden that we were watching last night. The other great thing about Biden, or good thing for Trump about Biden last night, he did get Biden to distance himself from a lot of the radical left agenda. He got Biden to say, oh, no, I'm not doing the Green New Deal. No, not me. I'm not the Green New Deal. I mean, probably a lot of leftists not too happy about that. They got Biden to denounce the Green New Deal. They got him to say he does not support single-payer socialized medicine. He's got something similar, but not exactly that. But he did kind of backpedal from that. So Trump did, through needling him, get him to back off from some of the left-wing agenda that really has brought many of the young people, the leftists, out in this country, because they thought he was going to bring them the Green New Deal and socialized medicine. So Trump accomplished that. But now I want to get back to the final and closing today and talking about women and voting for Trump. Obviously, in the debate last night, President Trump was trying the tactic of needling Biden and to see if he could get him rattled, because Biden, not on drugs, is easily rattled, easily thrown off his argument, thrown off the discussion, and can't remember what the topic was. And that, I mean, I don't have any inside scoop to the Trump campaign, but I'm going to guess that was a decision. Try to get Biden rattled and see if you can knock him off his game. So President Trump interrupted him a lot. He talked over him. He corrected him. He defended himself. And so there are people watching it saying, you know, why can't Trump be quiet? Even I was thinking, I'd kind of rather let Biden talk more, because I think the more he talks, the more foolish he'll sound. But, you know, there was the debate last night left a lot of people rattled, especially women. Left people feeling rattled, like, I don't really want to see the president badgering Biden. I don't want to see him like the president acting that way, and you shouldn't interrupt, and you shouldn't do that. And, you know, they follow the rules. There's 2 minutes for every answer, and let the other guy have his 2. All of that. People had that reaction to the debate. And last night, I had that reaction a little bit. But I have to tell you what I've come around to. We are in a fight for the very existence of America the free. That is where we are. We're in a fight over whether or not we're going to go down the socialist, leftist hole that the left, the Marxist left in this country is coming at America like a freight train headed our way. We have that coming at us, and we have Trump standing up against it. That's where we are. It doesn't matter what Joe Biden thinks about anything. If he were to possibly win, which God help us if he does, if he were to possibly win, he's not going to be in charge. He's not going to be Mr. Moderate Senator with a smiley face. It's going to be the beginning of the leftist takeover of America. It's going to be like the election of Chavez in Venezuela or the election of Castro in Cuba. That is where we are headed. Biden doesn't know what day it is. He did well last night. I'll give him credit. Maybe they can drug him up and get him through another one. But is what we are fighting against in this country is a radical left taking over this country. And what we have, the boulder we have standing in the road, stopping that freight train, is President Donald Trump. So women, if you were bothered by interruption, talking over, belligerence, okay, fine. Teach your kids to be more polite. Teach them to follow Emily Post's rules of etiquette. I agree. We taught our children to be polite and not interrupt. But this is not an etiquette competition. This is not a competition to see who can perform better under the debate rules. This is not about who honored the 2 minutes precisely and who talked over the end of 2 minutes. This is about whether or not we hold on to America the free or we lose America the free. That's what the election is. It doesn't matter what you think or what anyone thinks about whether or not President Trump interrupted Joe Biden too often or talked over him or sounded belligerent. None of that matters. It does not matter. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have the radical left take over America, or you're going to have President Trump and the preservation of America. And women especially, the left tries to play to your heartstrings, try to say, well, women, ladies, weren't you kind of offended? I mean, that's just terrible. President Trump interrupted, and he was belligerent, he was rude, and he talked over. Do not get duped into thinking that that's what matters in 2020, whether or not someone followed debate rules precisely, or interrupted somebody, or talked over them. It does not matter. What matters is if you figure out, and if enough Americans figure out, that we either have America the free and Donald Trump, or we have the tumbling over the socialist cliff that is coming without question if you have the radical left win this election in 2020. As I do at the close of every show, I close the show by telling you why the stories we talked about today matter to you. So we started today, Hillary's 2016 anti-Trump scheme exposed, why it matters. DNA, John Ratcliffe's letter to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman is explicit and explosive. CIA Brennan, the director of the CIA under Obama, Brennan, personally placed on notice in 2016 that U.S. intelligence officials learned of possible Hillary Clinton plot to create the Russia controversy to distract from her supposedly lost emails. Brennan knew, Obama knew, Biden knew, Comey knew, Strzok knew of this plot, and they went ahead with the fabricated Russia collusion investigation of Trump. The debate frenzied leftist propaganda, mainstream media do not want to cover this development, but the implications are profound, overwhelming, monumental. Obama, Biden led the fraudulent coup attempt against President Trump. That is what Trump is running against, and that is why he is fighting. Flynn judge becomes the prosecutor. Why it matters: the American judicial system, FBI, law enforcement investigate crime. District attorneys and U.S. attorneys decide whether to prosecute, plea bargain, or dismiss. Judges and juries hear and decide guilt or acquit. Judge Emmett Sullivan is an activist, leftist hack. He refuses to act as a judge. He is determined to prosecute Flynn despite abundant evidence that Flynn was innocent and framed. Emmett Sullivan is disgracing himself, the legal profession, and the judiciary. This is a part of what Trump is running against. This is what Americans must see as a reason to vote Trump and R. Trump debate and the women's vote. President Trump was looking across the stage at a man, Joe Biden, who was vice president of the United States, co-led a coup against Trump using a phony Russia collusion scheme dreamed up by Hillary Clinton, and led the framing of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who set corrupt CIA, DOJ, and FBI officials on a path to destroy Trump and his family, who launched his campaign on the demonstrable lie of very fine people on both sides, whose son Hunter was plainly grifted millions for himself through political corruption. Trump has every reason to be fiercely angry with Biden. He does not owe Biden politeness. Chris Wallace was a transparent Democrat political hack, an embarrassment of bias. Everyone knows Dems are trying to steal the election through pandemic fraud, enabling mail-in ballots. We only have this mail-in ballot thing because of the farce of a pandemic. And Trump should accept a stolen election? Joe Biden wore a device tucked in his shirt sleeve. What was it? Drugs? Wire? His dementia is well documented. He did not recover in one night. Women of America, we're facing a Marxist overthrow, and Trump is our only hope. And that, my very fine friends, is America Can We Talk for today. Thank you so much for tuning in every Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. Central Time, to America Can We Talk, where I always talk truth about America because America matters. And I'll talk to you next time.
America Can We Talk? Truth about America.